Welcome back to the My Latin Life podcast. Since 2014, My Latin Life has been your trusted guide to traveling and living in Latin America. My guest today is Ralph Velasco, also known as the Continental Drifter. They create once-in-a-lifetime travel experiences specifically for the 40-plus crowd. Ralph, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, great to be here. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Maybe you could walk us through, just to kick things off, the vision for the Continental Drifter, what it is you guys do, and I like how you guys appeal to the 40-plus crowd with your trips.
Yeah, so I organize and lead small group trips around the world and have done so since 2008. So coming up on 16 years now, I think. And over
Wow.
that period, I've done over 120 international tours, multi-week with groups of anywhere from 6 to 10 travelers. And I really love to share these incredible places that I go to, scouting in advance or places that I've traveled to before, and then bringing my clients back to enjoy these places. And so sharing that with them is one of the best parts of my job, of course. And so now I am, the pandemic was a big hit for me, of course, but then I just recently started writing some books that had to do with mindful and intentional travel. And so getting people to
Mm,
be more present and to get more out of their experiences. So that's the idea behind that.
that's cool. I definitely want to learn more in this episode about what it takes to organize a trip. We've definitely had ideas about organizing trips and probably audience members as well, and then also learn about maybe um, what's important to the 40-plus crowd and kind of what you've learned from 100-plus group trips. Before we crack in, probably should mention that this isn't like a paid promotion or anything like that. Although Ralph, you definitely need to hook me up with a promo code or something. But we're we're just here to sort of learn together and learn from your experience of 100-plus trips over 16 years, which is incredible. That's a lot of experience. Where to kick things off? Six to 10 people is actually a pretty small, tight knit group. Do you think that that's the right group size? Because I imagine if it's 40-plus, it's gonna be a lot of couples, maybe some singles. How do you think about that?
Yeah, no, been a great group size for me. It's much more manageable. What I love about it and what my clients love about it, though, is that it gets us into smaller restaurants, more boutique hotels, smaller
Mm,
villages, because
mm,
you can't get a big bus into some small village,
right.
or 40 people into some locally owned restaurant that's just a mom and pop place with 4 or 5 tables. And
Mm,
those are the kinds of experiences that I'm trying to create for my groups. There's a lot of successful companies that do the bigger bus trips, but that's just not what my clients are looking for or that I'm looking to lead. And
yeah, that makes sense.
I actually created an online course called Tour Organizer Training, where I was teaching people how to organize and lead their own tours. And so it's a 14 hours worth of content.
14 hours.
Yeah, I mean,
Damn.
it's an online course, and so you take it at your own leisure, and so it's very robust. And so that it was something that I created because, man, do I wish it was around when I started. There was nothing like online courses, 16 years ago, I don't think, that I knew of, and so I would just figure it out. And so I decided to create a course where people could just go step by step and learn everything that I know.
This is fascinating. So basically, you try to get everyone in a one Sprinter van, I'm guessing?
Exactly. Yep. That's about it. Maybe even a smaller van, depending on the size. I've had groups of as small as 4, but we're moving to more 6 to 10, 12 people, maybe.
And I gotta ask, I'm a little chismoso, a little gossipy. So, um, are you have like singles and couples on the same trip, or do you do like a couples trip and then a singles trip? You ever had? There must be some crazy hookup stories along the way.
No, not at all. Not in the 40s plus crowd, at least not that I've found out, that I know about. But Yeah, we get a good mix of singles and couples or friends traveling together. I get a lot of married men or women that the spouse just doesn't have an interest in traveling, so they come by themselves. If people are looking to save the single supplement, I will often connect them with another same sex traveler so that they can both save the single supplement. That's just something that we have to charge if someone's taking their own room throughout the trip. We need to charge a supplement for that. The hotels are charging us that supplement.
What is a single supplement? Sorry.
So it's typically when I price a trip, it's a in double occupancy price.
Ah,
So that's two people in the same room. If
by default, you charge one price for two people
No, no, I charge the same price for each person that's going in
in the
double
couple.
occupancy.
Okay, okay, okay.
So let's
So if
say
I was going to bring my girlfriend on the trip, you quote it as whatever $2,000 per person, but I pay both.
Yeah,
And,
you'd
and
pay 2 times 2,000, and if you wanted your
uh-huh.
own room, you might pay a $500 single supplement, so it'd be 2,500 for you to have your own
Okay.
room throughout the trip. So that's
Okay,
called a
got it.
single supplement. Yeah,
Understood. Okay.
yeah.
Got it. And where do you typically go? It looks like it's a mix of a lot of Europe, it appears, a little bit of Mexico. What are the most common spots?
Yeah, so I do a lot of Cuba. Cuba's my most, popular trip by number of times that I've been there. I've done that trip 19 times. Mexico, I do Copper Canyon. About
Hmm.
10 years ago, I shot the travel and cultural images for a cookbook on Mexican cuisine. And we went to like 40 different locations throughout Mexico. I used to live in Mexico City, and so I know it well. But the one place I said I wanted to bring a group back to was Copper Canyon. And so that's a trip that I still do, although I'm taking
That's
it
where
out.
the train is, right?
That's right, El Chepe train. It's absolutely fascinating. Great, great trip. You got the Tarahumara Indians. Copper Canyon is bigger and deeper than the Grand Canyon, and it's got one of the great train rides of the world right through it. So it's a fabulous
Hmm.
trip.
And people can't see because you're on video, or you're on video for me, but they can only hear the audio. You have a California license plate behind you. Are you typically based in California?
I lived in California for 15 years, and so that was my license plate when I kind of started my business out in around 2008. And it says Photo Tours, FOTO 2RS. So I just put that in the background here.
Okay. So Copper Canyon, why do you choose that particular tour? So it's in Chihuahua State, I'm pretty sure, like kind of close-ish to California in the border. Is that why do you choose this particular trip as opposed to say, I don't know, the Yucatan Peninsula or Valle de Guadalupe and go to some wineries or something? What's particular about this Copper Canyon trip? And I'm curious just because I spent a lot of time in Mexico too, but I still haven't friggin' been there yet.
Come with me this summer. Yeah, we so on that cookbook shoot, because I'm a photographer, so they hired me to do the cookbooks, the to travel and cultural images. Well, we went to 40 different locations over 35 days, so we saw a lot of the country. And like I said, that was the one place that I said I want to bring groups back to. Now, Mexico, as you know, is one of the most varied countries. Beautiful, great food. I could create countless trips to Mexico. But
Hmm.
Copper Canyon really struck me because of the train, because of the canyon itself, the culture there, the Tarahumara Indians, who are known as the running people, and they've got
Mm.
this affinity for running long distances for days at a time.
Hmm.
They used to run down deer until the deer collapsed from exhaustion, and then they'd pick it up and carry it home, after a couple days or something. So pretty amazing stuff. And many of the people still live in caves and cliff overhangs till this day. So it's just a beautiful part of the country. It's fairly off the beaten path. I like to get away from crowds and too much tourism when possible. So the train itself is really a lot of locals actually, but there is a
Yeah.
tourist train as well.
And it leaves from Los Mochis in
Yep.
Sinaloa.
Hmm.
So how do you get everyone to Los Mochis? Is
So
that where you kind of
everyone,
start the trip?
we always, on all our trips, I tell people where to be when. So they arrange their own flights to the starting and ending point of the trip, ending point from the trip. And so we used to do Los Mochis, start in Los Mochis, go up to Creel, and then back down to Los Mochis. So you get a round trip to Los Mochis. Now we are flying this year into Chihuahua, which is a bigger airport, and then we're transferring people to Creel, and then we'll take the train down to El Fuerte and back up. So you just
Ah,
seen it from a different direction. Um, but those are the reasons
yeah.
I chose the trip because it was so varied, so different. Not a lot of people were doing it. And so I said, this is a place that I want to bring a group back to. I still work with the same people who it was a couple who owned a hotel in Creel, and they were our fixers on that photo shoot, and now they are my tour operators who help me put together the trip from soup to nuts in Copper Canyon.
Okay, so fly into Chihuahua and then take some sort of transport to Creel, or probably they pronounce it Creel,
I think
and
it's great.
that's where
Hmm.
the train stops slash starts.
No, it starts in Chihuahua, but just with the timing of the train, it only goes once a day each way, from what I understand. If, that's how it used to work. So the timing of the train, we need to leave the next day. It only goes certain days of the week sometimes. So we were going to transfer people by land over to Creel, which is like 3 hours. We're going to make a couple stops along the way. There's a Mennonite community there. Creel, Chihuahua itself is a very interesting history. So, and then the train, we're going to pick it up in Creel and head down to El Fuerte. And then the next day, El Fuerte back up. But of course, we're going to spend 3 nights in Creel, uh, one night in El Fuerte, and then 3 nights in Divisadero, which is back up near Creel. And that's
Mm.
right on the canyon rim. So our rooms are right on the rim of the canyon. There's an adventure park. You can go zip lining. There's a teleferico. It's absolutely stunning.
Remind me the historical context of El Fuerte. I know they have I have a star in my Google Maps for Museo El Fuerte, and I know it's like a historic site.
I think it's, they say it's the birthplace of Zorro, I think. Um,
Ah, that's epic.
I believe so. Yeah.
That's epic, dude. I love Zorro. I love Zorro.
Yeah. So it's a really cool little town. And so we'll stay one night there, which is not typical because usually I try to stay at least 2 to 3 nights in a place. Now some of my trips, especially in Europe, are even 7, 8 nights in the same place, or 4 and 4, to do a deeper dive. So I'm much
There's
more.
just so much to do. Yeah.
Yeah, you'd spend months and months, as you know.
Wow. Yeah. So I knew about this train, but I didn't really have it on my mental radar just in terms of how much there is to do in Chihuahua State. Like, I kind of thought it was like, a bit of like a flyover state, so to speak. But it's true now that I kind of click in that there's a lot to do. Like, the natural landscape is insane, history, the train.
Waterfalls,
Um,
lakes,
well,
there's a pine forest. The weather is absolutely gorgeous because it's at 7,500 feet,
mm,
when you get up to Creel and Divisadero.
mm,
So going in July, which is when we go, or we used to go in August, people are like, God, isn't that a terrible time to go? And it's absolutely fabulous. So it's like spring-like weather, beautiful clouds, because there's the landscape is so big because you're looking over the canyon.
uh-huh.
There you can see thunderstorms and lightning and rainbows. It's absolutely stunning.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, this is definitely on my radar now, big time. That's amazing. Interesting. Mexico has so much to offer. It's insane.
Yeah.
I was curious. You said your average trip is how long?
Well, it depends. So I go anywhere from 7 days to 14, let's say.
Hmm.
So it just depends on the trip. I also do Antarctica. That's an 8-day trip. And so we spend one night in Punta Arenas on the way down,
Hmm.
and 5 nights on the ship in Antarctica. We fly down, fly there and back, and then one night back in Punta Arenas, and then out. And some people will add some days before or after. But that's a fairly new trip. Last year was the first time I offered it, and I went this year for the first time. Unbelievable place. One of super impressive. Just the quiet and the purity and the natural beauty is just stunning. And I admit it's a little hard to impress me these days because I've been traveling pretty hardcore, but I was blown away by Antarctica.
Okay, let's double click in on this one next because this is Antarctica, Chile, Argentina. This is definitely our domain here at My Latin Life in Latin America.
Hmm.
So you tell people to fly. You say like starting point is Punta Arenas, Chile, and people got to get there themselves somehow.
Yeah. So I tell people where to be when. So I say, well, you need to be at the hotel by 2 o'clock on the start date of the trip. So if you can get a flight that maybe gets in at 10, you're probably going to be okay, but otherwise get in a day early. And
Hmm.
then people arrange their own flights, and we get them from the airport to the hotel. And then the trip starts on the trip start date. That trip is fairly um, packed with things to do schedule wise, where normally my trips are about half day scheduled, half day free time. in
Hmm.
in Antarctica, we've got morning and afternoon zodiac rides where they'll either zip us around a glacier bay that's absolutely amazingly beautiful with glaciers and icebergs and seals
Hmm.
and whales and things. Or if there's a landing point, we'll get off the zodiac and walk maybe some sort of a path around the area to get different viewpoints, see other animals and landscapes, and then the Zodiac takes us back to the boat, the ship. And this is
What's a zodiac? Sorry.
Zodiac is like a rubber raft, fits like 10 or 12 people.
Uh,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. It's got a little motor at the back.
And this is the only one I want to know the price on. Like, how much does the Antarctica trip cost?
That one's $15,000 in double occupancy. Single room is 21,000. It's not an
Okay.
inexpensive trip. And if people are looking for different trips, you'll find cheaper trips. But what stands out about this one is number one, you fly down, so you save 4 or 5 days of potential agony just crossing the Drake Passage. One of the clients on my last trip, it was his second attempt to get down to Antarctica because he sailed from, I think, Ushuaia to to the continent, and someone died on his ship because there was such incredible waves, and he was walking down the hallway and just got knocked against a wall, I think, and got a head injury. So they didn't get to
Shit.
the continent. The trip had to be rerouted and everything.
So what do you mean you fly down?
So we fly down to the continent from Punta Arenas in
You
less than
fly to Antarctica.
we fly to Antarctica.
I,
And
I didn't even know that was possible. I thought you had to take a ship.
nope. So we fly down. There's King George Island. It's a decent size airstrip, and the airplanes are like 75 seaters and commercial airlines with flight attendants and everything, three and three. You get lunch on the way and everything. And so we fly down and land on King George Island, and then we get Zodiacs from the shore there to the ship. And the ship, that's another reason that it's a little bit pricey, is that it's the smallest ship in the entire region at 67 passengers. Other ships are 300, even more than that. And only the Antarctic Treaty only allows 100 people to get off at any one landing. So some ships they can't get off, or they have to get off in stages or whatever. But
Oh,
our
that
whole ship
sucks.
can get off. Yeah, it would. So there's a price to pay for that intimacy and flying down, no doubt about it.
Yeah, I'd probably be down to fly and not be sloshing around the ocean.
Exactly.
Um, How big is the plane that flies? Is it like a propeller thing or?
It's 2 to 4 propellers, but it is a 75 seater. Like I said, it's got flight attendants. They've got beverage and lunch service and 2 pilots, and it's a commercial airliner. But
Okay,
they, and the woman I talked to on the flight attendant, I asked her about it. She says, "Oh yeah, I've been doing this route for 10 years." I'm like, "Wow, that's pretty incredible."
that is pretty intense.
Yeah.
This is cool. This is a different route than I'm aware of. I knew there kind of were different routes, but I assume like by far the more common route is to leave from Ushuaia.
Yep, for sure.
So this is kind of the less common route, but I guess from Ushuaia, what you can't fly from Ushuaia. It has to be um,
I
a
believe
boat.
so. I believe so. Yeah.
Interesting. Okay,
So it's 2.5 days each way on a ship, or you could fly down in less than 2 hours. And so
that's a
that was,
no-brainer.
and I'm a sailor. I mean, I love being on the ocean, but I have no interest in being in potentially 30, 50 foot waves on a huge ship like that. Um, than to just fly down in 2 hours, saves 5 days. So there's a price to pay for that. There's a premium, but I think it's well worth it.
Yeah, no, I mean that's pretty much in line with what I've heard, like 15, 20 grand. I mean,
Yeah.
I've heard maybe you could get it for like 10 or 12, but like probably not too much less than that. I'm not
Yeah.
super sure though.
Yeah, those are big ships. You're sailing back and forth. You probably are 3 days down there and you probably can't get off the ship. So it just depends what kind of experience you're looking for.
And so what's the deal? Is you think Antarctica there's some crazy conspiracy madness going on in the mainland there?
As for what? What do you mean?
Have you heard about the conspiracy theories about Antarctica? How about there's I don't even know like a landmass in the middle, or they're hiding stuff from us.
I don't know. I'm not a big conspiracy theorist, so I typically don't believe that stuff. I'm sure there are things that the government's hiding from us, of course, but I don't know about the fact that it's in Antarctica.
Okay,
But
just checking before we move on.
yeah,
Okay, and then so those are the two big trips that you do in Latin America, or are there others?
well, I do Cuba, like I said.
Right, 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 right.
Yeah, Cuba. So that's one of my most popular trips, and that's wonderful because just obviously 45 minutes away from Miami. Flights, it's nothing to get there, and it's one of the most fascinating countries you'll ever go to. Have you been yourself?
I have not,
Yeah, it's absolutely, yeah,
and I'm Canadian. Like I have no reason not to go.
exactly. Yeah, that's right. You guys just fly over us and go right down there. So yeah, it's like you're Florida, I think.
Exactly.
But it's a wonderful, and Havana is absolutely beautiful, but definitely in a rustic sort of way. The hotels we stay at are very, very nice, but you walk out and it's a lot of crumbling buildings and the old cars, and that's what people want to see.
Yeah,
And you can really sort of picture it in its former glory 60, 70 years ago. But I
yeah.
love,
We're all about the crumbling colonial building here at My Latin Life. We love that. So
yeah.
what do you do? What's the itinerary? So if you do Havana for a little bit, I imagine you kind of venture out to Varadero or the beach somewhere, or what do you
Nope.
do?
Nope. So ours are fully licensed itineraries by the U.S. government, so they have to be licensed itineraries because typically, and I've had Canadians on and other people, but um, for Americans they have to be fully licensed, approved itineraries. I used to do. I've done an Eastern Cuba trip, Baracoa, um, Santiago de Cuba, Holguin, but now and then I used to do. Cienfuegos and Trinidad with Havana. But now we concentrate on Havana. We pack and unpack once. We do a day trip out to the Vinales Valley, which is the tobacco
Hmm.
region.
Hmm.
And we do a real deep dive into Havana because just 2 or 3 nights in Havana is not enough.
Mm,
So we spend,
got it.
I believe it's 6 nights there.
Yeah, go see some jazz shows.
Some, yes, not necessarily jazz, but, like the Cuban music,
Salsa.
salsa
Yeah,
type.
Cuban music.
Yeah, it's
Yeah, yeah.
fantastic. All you hear is music down there. It's great.
Okay, so when people go on the Cuba trip, they're really doing like a extensive deep dive in Havana with some day trips.
That's right. Yeah,
Okay.
and they love it.
Yeah, makes sense. Makes sense. Are they able to bring back cigars? There's like a quota or something?
There you used to be able to bring back cigars and some bottles of rum, but we don't recommend people do that now because things have changed, and we just don't want anyone getting in trouble. It's not worth it.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
rules are always changing, and it's just not worth it.
Okay, but I definitely want to touch on Europe and some of the trips you do there. But before we do, is there anything else about any other Latin America trips that you do?
Well, I've done Colombia. I just did Colombia last year, and that's a pretty great place. And so I took it off the calendar to make room for other trips. But wonderful culture, beautiful country, very nice people.
And what would you do
Where? Where would we go?
in Colombia? What would be your
Yeah, let's
itinerary?
see. Fly into Cartagena. Then we would, see that area. Then we would fly to Medellin, look around that area, do some day trips from there. Then we would fly to, I think it's Pereira, and also to, we would go to Cali, end up in Cali. We drove from Pereira to Cali and stayed at an incredible like bird watching resort, and
Nice.
absolutely stunning. And do some things around there, and then we fly out of Cali. So
Hmm.
yeah,
That one seems more flight heavy of
yeah,
a
we do
trip.
two internal flights just to save time. Yeah,
Yeah,
so
yeah. You don't want to take those buses in
oh yeah,
Colombia. It's brutal,
12,
like the
14 hours or
mountain
something.
roads and stuff.
Yeah.
Okay. Random question before we skip over to Europe. Do
Mhm.
people on your itineraries, is there like an expectation of Wi-Fi or that, some people maybe are doing a bit of work during the trips, or is it like really like a vacation?
Well, people do whatever they want. I mean, we mostly have uh, Wi-Fi in almost every place that we go, but there are some times where you're in a remote part of the country, or like in Cuba, the last place we stayed didn't have Wi-Fi, and
Uh-huh.
or was very spotty, and that was just kind of expected. And people like the idea of sort of unplugging and
Hmm.
just enjoying the trip as it is. I typically have to get some work done when I'm on a group trip, so I'm sometimes scrounging for Wi-Fi here and there just to get online, because otherwise, you know, it's hard for me to be away for 2 weeks and not be able to get online. So that's rare, but almost
Right,
everywhere
right. So
has
just kind
Wi-Fi
of
these days.
a little periodic for emails, but okay. So let's talk about. So we do at My Latin Life talk a fair bit about Portugal, Spain, a little bit talking about Italy and stuff.
Mhm.
Seems like what are the most popular European? What's your most popular European trip? This episode of the My Latin Life podcast is brought to you in part by Job Stacking. If you're a remote or hybrid worker looking to maximize your earning potential, then Rolf Haltza, author of Job Stacking, guarantees you'll be able to double your income by implementing his paycheck multiplication layering method. This is the exact system Rolf has used to take his own income and those of many others beyond 20K a month. With this method, Rolf contractually guarantees that you'll be able to double your income in 45 days. So, if you're interested in unleashing your earning potential and doubling your income, then click the link in the description and book a call with Rolf right now. Hey guys, quick break from the episode to tell you about BitRefill. BitRefill allows you to shop online and in person without banks, converting your crypto directly into merchant balance. We're talking gift cards to Nike, Amazon, Apple, Airbnb, Hotels.com, and many more, all paid for with crypto. BitRefill offers more than 10,000 gift card options in 180 countries all across Latin America, including Brazil, Colombia, Mexico, Argentina, El Salvador, and many more. You can also apply the code MyLatinLife at checkout to get 10% back on your first purchase. Go to bitrefill.com for more information.
I would say Spain or Portugal. I've been going to Spain since 1979 when I was in high school, and I studied there for a summer. So I just fell in love with Europe and Spain in particular. I've got a Spanish background. My family comes from Spain and Mexico, so I've just got some sort of natural affinity to it, and I speak the language, so that helps a lot. But I've always loved Spain, and I call Spain the other Italy, and Portugal is the other Spain. And what I mean by that is that, Italy just gets all the headlines. Everyone wants to go to Italy because it's a great country. But Spain has everything that Italy has at somewhat lesser price. I think a lot of the um, infrastructure is much better, and Portugal is kind of the same. So they're all three fascinating countries, but Spain is probably my most popular trip. I've done Madrid, Segovia, Toledo, Barcelona as a tour. I might bring that one back, but now I concentrate on northern Spain and doing San Sebastian and the Rioja region, which is just gorgeous. So we do a lot of wine tasting. Food's really important on my trips. I come from a restaurant background, so I'm very interested in the food in these places. We have lunch at a private gastronomic society. Have you ever heard of those?
Tell me about it.
Yeah, it's they used to be sort of men's clubs, and it was a way for the women to get the men out of the house and for the men to, kind of get away from the women, I suppose. And so everyone would bring food, or they had a common commissary. It's almost like a country club for food. And so these guys typically own the building. They pay membership dues monthly. There's a limited membership amount of people, and they're maybe in a small building. With one that we go to in Logroño, Spain, is got like six different kitchens and rooms for dining. So, if you've got a group of 10 people, you choose this one. If you got 30 people, you choose a different one. And then, but the food is absolutely fantastic. It's usually very simple, sort of Spanish typical foods. And so now they're letting people in like us if you have a connection. So I bring my groups there. And it's absolutely one of the best experiences ever. Something I'd wanted to do for like 10 years. And I finally found a tour operator that could get me into one. And so I went there, and we had like a 5 hour lunch. And so that's an experience that you don't have every day, and one that you probably wouldn't find if you're just going to Spain on your own. They typically don't let you, you can't just walk in off the street. You have to have an in with a member. So that's a fantastic experience. And we also do wine tasting, of course, because this is the wine region. We go do cider tasting, sidra. So we love to go cider tasting as well. There's a hot air balloon ride optional activity over the vineyards of Rioja. It's incredible. So, the food is a big part of that. We uh, we stay in a town called LaGuardia, which is it's like a Tuscan hill town. If you've been to Tuscany, or people know, Italy is known for the hill towns, beautiful towns up on hills, and Spain has those in. So the town's called LaGuardia. It's one word, and it's so beautiful.
LaGuardia,
And the
Spain.
the like basement of the hill town is all honeycombed, where they used to hide from invaders, but now they've turned them into wine cellars and tasting rooms, and it's just unbelievable. So that's one of my favorite trips, and that's 4 nights. We stay in San Sebastian, which is sort of the capital of that area, and then that's Basque Country, and then we go down to LaGuardia, spend 4 nights there. So you get a really nice mix. They're only 2 hours apart, so you're not doing a lot of driving.
Hmm. Okay. I have my Google Maps open. I'd love for you to hit us with some like underrated towns and locations in Spain that I can add to my list.
Yeah, I mean, in that area, Haro is a beautiful little town. It's sort of the wine capital of that area. So it's a little bit bigger town, and a lot of the
Mm,
wineries are based there. Logroño, which I mentioned, has Calle
hmm.
Laurel, which is considered to be the best street food in Spain. So it's a lot of little tapas bars that specialize in one or two sort of items. There's the mushroom place or the
Okay, I found it.
whatever.
Calle del Laurel.
Yeah, Calle Laudel. It's absolutely amazing. There's like 100,
Hmm.
120 different tapas bars, and we do a tapa crawl, tapa tour there.
Tapatur.
Tapa tour. Or
Like
pinchos. They're
it.
called pinchos in that area.
Bean
Yeah, and then we
shoes.
do that up in San Sebastian as well. It's got a little bit of an old town, and so it's just incredible. I just love it. And I just may be moving to Spain or Portugal in the next year or so. That's my goal.
And where are you based now?
I'm in Chicago, but I'm nomadic, so I just come and go from here.
Hmm. What's um your trade off or pros and cons Spain versus Portugal?
Well, the language, of course. I speak Spanish, Portuguese, especially the Portugal Portuguese is a very difficult language. I find that the Brazilian Portuguese is much easier to understand. But I love Portugal because it's a lot smaller and everything's maybe 3 hours away, almost from top to toe of the whole country. Not quite 3 hours, but
Hmm.
like Porto to Lisbon's 3 hours. It's got a
Uh,
pretty good train infrastructure, a lot of seafront, a lot of beaches, great
yep.
food, amazing people. So I love Portugal. It's probably a little bit less expensive than Spain, but Spain is bigger, and that's a pro because you've got so many varied parts of it. A lot of coastline, bigger cities. Segovia, Spain, is one of my favorites, and that's right outside of Madrid. Segovia and Toledo, but especially Segovia. It's got 2,000-year-old Roman aqueduct that is held together with gravity. There's no cement or anything. It's just Roman stones that they figured out how to use that keystone to make everything stay together 2,000 years later. It's got the Alcazar, which is the castle there. Um, Beautiful
Mm,
walk. If you go there, there's this beautiful walk that you can walk around the outside of the city. It's up on a hill. It's another hill town, and you can walk around the outside and look up at the city from all these different angles. It's through like a forest. It's not a long walk. Toledo has something similar, but it's more along the riverfront. But I love doing these really nice walks, not necessarily hard hikes or anything, but just sort of walks that get different viewpoints,
uh-huh.
especially as a photographer. And then we'll have lunch at some local place or um, yeah, so really fantastic. Cadiz in southern Spain is wonderful. That's
Hmm.
I believe it's sort of on an island or a little
Hmm.
peninsula, and so that's a really cool old town. You've got the sherry in that area, Jerez, and so the food everywhere in Spain is just off the charts. I've not been to Valencia or too much of the eastern coast of Spain from sort of Barcelona down to Malaga. But yeah, when I was there in 1979, we did Sevilla, Cordoba, Granada, Torremolinos. So
I like your way of describing things. It's like descriptive but matter of fact. I don't know. I like how you're. I can tell you're a pretty good like tour operator,
storyteller.
storyteller too. Speaking of operating tours, I would love to know a little bit more about just like the brass tacks of how you operate these things. Because I guess just selfishly, I would love to do something like this myself, or like lend the My Latin Life brand name and like make like a, I don't know, what do you call it, like branch of the company that does tours or something. So I guess you have a whole course dedicated to this. Would love to glean some tips. Would you be able to give us like a high level overview of some of the major ideas from the course?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, one of the main things I talk about is having a special interest. And so for yours, it would be your Latin life, people wanting to maybe move to a place and check out different destinations or scout them out. I imagine that you recommend people go and rent for a while before they decide to buy something and permanently, uh, you know, get caught
Definitely.
up, right? So so have a special interest. Now, mine started out being photography, so I would teach travel photography. Yours is
Mm,
going to be, maybe expats moving to Latin America. It could be languages or uh, fashion, or so many different special
sure.
interests.
So travel with purpose is something you say,
Yeah.
right?
So people that want to, that have an interest, a special interest, and build your trip around that idea instead of just sort of a general travel company. I think you're better off. They always say to niche down. The
Sure.
riches are in the niches. So that's what I would. That's sort of my number one tip in that regard. The other thing is it's a long. I mean, I spent a lot of time and a lot of money making a lot of mistakes creating these trips, and that's why I created the course so that everything's sort of in one place, some soup to nuts. I walk you through everything, and that allows you to save a lot of time and a lot of money. And the course is $499. So, God, if someone had a $500 course back when I started out, I would have paid that all day long. But
What are some of the expensive mistakes you made?
Oh gosh. Well, I had to create a pricing spreadsheet. How do you price these trips? That's what everyone wonders. What do I charge? And so I spent years fine tuning a pricing spreadsheet that you get with the course. So that saves you literally hundreds of hours right there. So you plug in all your costs and expenses, the profit margin you want to make, and that spits out a price. And then it depends on how many people your trips are going to be. I do recommend smaller trips. I think they tend to attract a different type of traveler, at least for my trips. So it's someone that's maybe more well traveled, willing to spend more money on a small group trip. They like off the beaten path places. They're not into the typical Rome, Venice, Florence trip. We want to, my people have mostly already done all those sort of high overview type trips, and we're doing a deeper dive. Yeah. So pricing is really important. So I've priced trips, without a profit margin. I price them with by mistake. I price them for years. I would never charge for the scouting costs that I had because I always go to a place in advance for typically 2 weeks. I fly over there, spend 2 weeks of my time, 2 weeks of travel expenses, and that might be $3,000 to $5,000, and I never recoup that money. So I need to get that money back. That's a true expense. So early on, I never charge for that. So I recommend people do that, and you spread it over. The 10 people on your trip. So if it's 5,000, it's $500 more per person, but you might spread that over 2 trips. So now it's only 250 per person. So I teach all those kinds of things. And what else? I mean, I give like email templates and um, gear lists. And I also recommend that you create a buzz when you're on your scouting trip or and future trips. So you're always posting and, you know, typical sort of, hey guys, look at this amazing food that we're eating, or this person that we met, or this place that we're standing right now. And now you can do Facebook lives and all kinds of stuff that allows you to create buzz and interest and scarcity. People are, oh wow, I want to do that. Well, as far as possible, of course, but typically I will scout the place a year in advance. So I want to be there at the time of year that I think the trip should run. because I
Hmm.
want to get the pictures and be there when it's the harvest or the spring flowers or something. I don't want to get there in winter and then do the trip in summer. So I've got a year that might take a month or two to create the trip after, get the pricing, figure out the exact itinerary and route, um, start marketing it maybe 10 months out. And then if I could fill it up
Wow,
by 4 months out, that's a
that's
good
like,
thing.
and I imagine you have times where you're like close to departure, less than a month, and you're like, damn, we still got some spots. I gotta
Yeah.
grind it.
Yeah, it's not an easy business. The first thing to know is that it is a business. It's not. People think I'm on vacation all the time because they see me in these amazing places, and I only show them, the great pictures and the fun times. I don't do the behind the scenes stuff of what's really involved, because unless you're looking to do this as a career, you're going there for a vacation. The people that I'm marketing to, they don't want to know all the behind the scenes stuff. But
Uh-huh.
sometimes it's important that they know, and when they see me on a trip, they realize how much is involved. I often, people say, man, I could never do what you do. um, you know
It's a lot of work. Even when
yeah,
I plan a trips for my buddies or they travel along with me, I'm like, dude, I'm like, this is like a part-time job, just babysitting my friends.
absolutely.
So I totally get it.
Yeah, imagine.
How far in advance, or what's like the payment structure? Do you try to get them to pay in full, or they pay like a deposit and then closer to departure they pay the
Yeah,
remainder?
B. So I ask for a deposit up front. Depends when the trip is. So if someone comes on late, they probably have to pay in full. Because once I get the deposits, I get enough people that to say it's six minimum, then I can call the trip a go. Then I get full payment from those six people. So that allows everyone to now get their flights because everyone's committed. Now they can get their
Uh-huh.
flights and we're all going. But then if someone comes onto the trip, they need to pay in full, and then they can get their
Okay.
flights.
So six deposits, trip's official. You tell the people the trip's official, send over a wire or whatever for the remainder.
Correct. That's
Okay, so as soon as you know the trip is official, you say pay in full, even if that's 6 months in
Yes,
advance.
because then we can get flights, we can get better seats, better pricing, more options, and then everyone's committed, and that trips. So the cash flow is good because you're getting paid in advance instead of 60, 90 days after, some
Sure.
product that you're selling.
Yeah, that wouldn't be doable. And then what about when people inevitably need to drop out because, their dog died or whatever? Really? So you say no refunds, take it up with your credit card or whatever.
Yeah. It doesn't happen too often, maybe 5 times over 120 trips, 1,000 people that's happened, but that's why people get trip insurance, and, that's why you need to spend the money on trip insurance. And, if it's still only the deposits in, there's a $250 administration fee, so you get $500 back. But then if you pay in full and it's 6 months out, you may get 50% back up to, I don't know, 4 months out. But then after 4 months, it's 100%,
Okay.
and that's, yeah. Hmm.
So you have a policy there. Okay. Okay. And how much typically do some
Yeah.
of
It depends
these
anywhere
trips
from
cost?
four
Like
to
what's
$21,000 for the, Antarctica, but,
yeah,
yeah, average is, probably
okay,
four
minimum
to seven
four.
thousand. But again,
And where do you find people?
yeah,
Is it
I
like
mean,
Facebook groups or
so I've got a
where are you
very
finding
narrow niche. I
people?
do a lot of public speaking. So I speak at a lot of the travel and adventure shows throughout the U.S. I'm on a lot of podcasts like this. So I try to get the word out that way. I One thing that I would recommend too for people that are looking to do this is, if you have that special interest, which I recommend, whatever it is, you should maybe start teaching at the local community college, or somewhere where you don't need a teaching degree unless you have one, But that's how I started. I started teaching travel photography at the local city of Newport Beach or City of Orange, or then the Santa Ana College and University of Irvine, California Extension Program. I didn't need a teaching degree for those things because they were sort of extension programs, adult education. So, number one, it gets you to practice being in front of people, teaching whatever your special interest might be, but also you can collect emails and start to build a following. When I first started out, social media in 2005, 2008, social media was not a big thing. I don't even think Facebook was around till 2006, seven, something like that. But when social media started and online advertising and all these different things that you can do now, that was sort of the perfect storm. Was digital photography for me. There was something to teach, that people were getting these new digital devices they didn't know how to use. I would teach them how to use that. That was my idea. And I started out with little walking tours, a 2 hour walking tour. I'd sit across the kitchen table from someone and show them, all the buttons and whistles on their cameras. And then we'd go out and walk in the local area and photograph. So that was sort of one on one. And then I would do these classes at different places. Webinars are now a new thing,
Mm,
that I do webinars to talk about these trips. So
definitely. You got to hit us with like one or two stories about someone missed the train or someone went to the hospital or something crazy happened, right? You probably have one or two ready for the next cocktail party. You want to hit us with one of those?
yeah, luckily, and I think it has a lot to do with how well I run my trips, but I haven't had a lot of problems on tours. One time a fan belt went out on a van in Cambodia, and we got it fixed in a half hour. Our truck broke down in India one time. We got that done in an hour or two. Nothing like where we got in an accident, knock on wood, or anything like that. I have had two people break ankles on trips, and that was simply because they slipped on gravel. And it was like one was a driveway that had a little bit of a decline, and she fell. And it was like, walking on ball bearings, unfortunately. And then the other one was in Costa Rica. I also didn't mention Costa Rica, but I've done trips to Costa Rica as well, where we were just going to check out a waterfall, and she slipped on some gravel and broke her ankle. So those were two of the worst things that happened to clients. Funny story is I was in the Republic of Georgia scouting, and I get to the first time I was there, I was flying in, and the tour operator, a young woman, maybe 35 years old, picked me up at the airport, driving me to my hotel, and I could tell she was a little bit sort of trepidatious, not a confident driver, and the traffic there can be terrible. So she must have seen me tensing up a little bit a couple times, and she said, "Oh, don't worry, Ralph. My dad's going to drive us around the next couple days that we're scouting here in Tbilisi." And I'm thinking to myself, "Oh, thank God." So the next day, her and him picked me up, and he's worse than her. And I don't know how, but he would slow down to pass people on the highway, and he would speed up when they would try to pass him. So just picture that. I don't know how it worked, but that's what happened. Anyway, he was just very difficult to drive with. I mean, I actually made an excuse the next day that I couldn't go because I was somewhat afraid for my life. Anyway, make a long story longer, they were going to take me to the Armenian
Hmm.
border to go on to Armenia, where I was going to scout there as well, because it was going to be a two
Hmm.
country trip, Georgia and Armenia. So they drive me to the border, to the checkpoint. They say, "Ralph, we'll wait here 15 minutes. Just make sure you get across." Okay, great. Thanks for everything. I get up to the man at the booth and slide my passport across the table. He looks at it, he says, "Do you have a visa for Azerbaijan?" I said, "No, I'm going to Armenia." He says, "This is the Azerbaijani border." said, "Oh my God, I had no idea." So he gave me my passport back, thank God. I walked back out and they were still waiting out there for me. And I said, "Guys, this is our Azerbaijani border." He says, "Oh my God, I didn't even realize that. We haven't been here in a long time." There was no flags out front. There was no sign that, I could have said, "Hey guys, this is Azerbaijan." Anyway, I'm thinking, after I got out of the car, I'm like, "Oh, relief. I'll never have to drive with those people again." But now I have to drive, they have to drive me 45 minutes to the Armenian border, which was in a different place. And so I had to spend another 45 minutes. And so that was just a fun story that kind of came up. And in the end, it was harmless, but you would think that they would have known to take me to the correct border.
That's funny. So 100 plus trips. What are some of the things you've kind of learned along the way? Either you've streamlined things, or you've learned how to deal with people, or learned how to set expectations. What do you know now that you didn't know 100 trips ago?
Yeah, good question. Yeah, setting expectations, I learned very quickly was hugely important. And when you start out, you're like, yeah, I'll take anyone on a trip, but if you're taking them on the wrong trip, that's not a good thing long term. And so I started to narrow that down, and I started to make sure that I was attracting people that were the right people for my trips. So I got more detailed about what my trips offered and what someone can expect on the trip. So people filtered themselves out. If they, were 20 somethings, or, they were looking for high adventure, or they wanted to sit on a beach, I made it very clear that those weren't my trips. So allow people to filter themselves out. That's really
Mm,
important. Um, and then doing the half day scheduled, half day free time, that attracts a certain type of traveler, which I learned later on was one that I preferred, because I started doing more photo tours and even photo workshops for other companies. But I knew I never wanted to do, real workshops, which are to me 12 hours a day, 24/7 talking
right.
photography and every sunrise, every sunset, et cetera, et cetera. So I wanted a more casual type of photographer. So someone that wants sort of half travel, half photography. Maybe they're casual photographers, not hardcore workshop guys with tripods and $10,000 cameras. So that started to filter people out. If someone, would say, "Well, Ralph, I got an afternoon free. What am I going to do? What are we doing?" Says, "Well, that's the time that you can sit by the pool, go grab a beer, relax, or do something that's not on the tour. See a museum, take your wife out to something that she wants to do, those kinds of things." So these are things that I learned little by little over time that were really important. Thank God I learned them earlier rather than
Hmm.
later. And so those I think are really important, is know your customer,
Yeah.
and target those people. Yeah, don't get the wrong
Yeah,
person on
because
your trip.
one like complainer or person that's not going with the flow could really ruin the vibe for everyone else, right?
Oh, you're absolutely right. And we've got a little thing we say on our trip. There's one on every trip, and if you don't know who it is, it's you. but but the truth is that's exaggerating, because and what I mean is the one person that's a pain in the ass, right? But no, on my trips, in like I said, over 1,000 people on my trips, I've probably had 10 people in that whole period that have mysteriously fallen off my list. They weren't like good people as far as cultural awareness, and obnoxious or needy and complainers, and those people fall off my list. But otherwise, I have the absolute best clients on my trips. They're more friends than clients. I've got people that have been on 25, 26 of my trips, some of them multiple times. One guy's been to Cuba with me 3 times. I've got people that have been 15, 17 trips, and a lot of five to
Wow.
sevens. So I get a lot
Wow.
of repeats. and all 5-star ratings on all my trips over 16 years.
Would you ever like discipline someone on a trip, or I guess you have to take them aside? How do you do something like that?
That's tough. It's really tough. Oftentimes things sort of work themselves out, but if I have to, I have to. You know, it's for the better of the group. I mean, it's always about the group's overall safety, comfort, experience. And if one person's ruining that for everyone, I'm going to have to talk to them. It's not an easy conversation to have, but it's
Do
important.
you what are some rules do you have? Like I imagine like you all hop on the sprinter for the first time. Everyone's just kind of getting acquainted. Do you do any even beyond rules? How do you do any relationship building exercises or something to get everyone acquainted when the trip starts?
Yeah, another great question. What I did when I started out, I didn't, we just kind of showed up and we were there and we would have a little talk before the trip really started. But now with like Zoom meetings and stuff, we get on a Zoom or two before the trip. So we start having a relationship there. I set up a Facebook group so that we could start to share information about ourselves, questions about the trip. Everything's right there. We could share trips, share pictures and videos during the trip and
Hmm.
after. I set up a WhatsApp group for us so that we can all communicate because early on, I used to have to go knock on everyone's door if there was a change in itinerary. And so now we have a WhatsApp group and everyone just keeps an eye on it. And I just put out a blast, hey guys, we're going to leave at 9 today instead of 8. And it works out great, but that also starts to create some relationship with everyone. We all see each other on the Zoom, a month or two
Hmm.
in advance. So that's always really good. The one thing I do though is the first item on the itinerary is that we have a meet and
Hmm.
greet, typically in the hotel lobby or a conference room or something. And we do go over a list of rules, guidelines. But number one is safety first. So, I don't want anyone to get hit by a tuk tuk or, a horse cart or something. So please, safety first. Number two is be on time. I'm very much a stickler for people being on
Yep.
time because I think it's extremely inconsiderate for someone to be late and affect everyone
Yep.
else's trip because we have our trips are very
Yep.
timed. It's sometimes, we've got either maybe it is a sunrise that's not going to wait for us, or we've got an appointment with someone, or we want to get ahead of the crowds or the heat of the day or something. So timing is very important. And if we're late one place, there's a
Right.
domino effect. So everyone must be on time. And number three is we're here to have fun. Let's just have a great time. So those are my three rules. But then I talk about, no music on the bus because it can be annoying to other people. Um, some photography tips we talk about. If you're late, you buy drinks. So that discourages a lot of people, and I've probably had 10 people have to buy drinks in the 12 years since I've been
I like that.
doing that. So but no one wants to be that person that's holding up everyone. I say, you know what? If I'm 15 minutes late, I don't consider it 15 minutes late. I consider it 15 times 10
Yep.
people late. I just wasted 10 people's 15 minutes, and
Yep.
that's not cool. So I'm very, very considerate, and everyone on my trips is too. Once in a while, the elevator got stuck or, something, but I say, okay, 8 o'clock means wheels up at 8 o'clock, not, oh, I got to go to the bathroom. I got to go get my camera, jacket, or something. Have those things done. 8 o'clock,
Yep.
we're gone. And it works out every time, and everyone appreciates it because it's in
Hmm.
everyone's benefit.
You ever any good like culture clashes, like maybe some brash New Jersey Italian Americans, and then like I don't know, some like Texas cowboys, and then some quiet Kansas people or something like that. You got anything good like that?
Do you mean with each
Yeah,
other on the
yeah.
trip, kind of thing? Yeah, personality clashes. We had one gentleman, I don't even know where he was from, but he was one of those 10 people where he just had zero cultural awareness. And we were in Morocco, which is a Muslim country. And we, the people are somewhat shy. They can be shy for photography. So I try to let people know what to expect. And this guy, we had our meet and greet, and him and his wife bring their tripods to the meeting. And I said, guys, I don't recommend that you bring tripods because the first thing we're going to do is walk through this very crowded market, and setting up a tripod, number one, is going to be dangerous for your camera, if someone knocks it over. But number two is it could be dangerous for the local people tripping over it and stuff. And so he got angry with me right then and there. He was a serious photographer. That was one of the reasons I don't like to go out with these super serious photographers. It's like, I didn't come on this trip to get bad photos. I'm going to do what I want to do. I paid for this trip. It's stuff like that. And then later on, he's taking pictures of the women covered up in the burqas and stuff. And, the woman's husband comes over and says, hey, no pictures, and we told him not to take pictures of the women, especially, wearing the scarves and things. And so he's sneaking shots. And so the husband came over and he got in his face and he would not delete the pictures. And so, I had to get my guide involved, and he kind of took care of it. But it's stuff like that is just ridiculous that someone would, feel that much about a photograph that they want to, ruin their reputation. And, that of all people from the United
Hmm.
States, because they know that that's where we're from.
Yeah, I
And it
saw
just
one
ruins
on
it for everyone.
Twitter the other day where it was like Japan, and it was like they're like photographing the geishas or whatever walking by, and it's just like looks so bad. Like it's like, dude, this isn't Disneyland. They're just walking down the street. Um, another random question. So you said 40 plus. There's definitely a big difference between someone that's 45 and 65 in terms of mobility and so forth. How do you plan for that?
Yeah, you need to be a good walker on our tours. We're not doing a whole lot of hiking and stuff once in a while, but everything's optional. So, uh, one time we had a woman that had Parkinson's on the trip, and that was to Cuba. Nicest lady ever, but she couldn't walk for very long distances, and her daughter was there to help her. So we hired a BC taxi, which is like a guy with a bicycle in the front
Sure,
and
sure.
2 to 4 seats in the back. And he would just ride her around the town, and
It's
she
pretty
didn't
fun.
have to walk. Everyone else walked
Uh-huh.
because they wanted to. It was a nice walk. And so we made a concession. Her daughter was there to help her. She didn't come on the trip expecting that. And she was nice about it. So that was, one concession that we made. But as far as age goes, there's not that big a difference between someone that's 45 and 75. So everyone gets along. There's respect. People learn from each other. There's networking. There's lifelong friendships that happen. So that's uh, that's a good thing. But like I said, the people on my trips become friends with each other. They can't wait to travel with someone on another trip. Like I've got a woman that's been on 4 or 5 trips already, and we're going to Vietnam in December. And she's like, "Is there anyone else I know on that trip? Anyone else that I know that's coming?" And I named a couple people, and she says, "What about Patrick? Is he coming?" And so I contacted Patrick, and I said, "Hey, Patrick, Shella's asking if you're going to come to Vietnam." So now he's coming to Vietnam. So it's
Good
stuff like
sales
that,
tactic.
and a little bit, yeah, a little, behind the scenes. But also, I do
Ah,
reunions.
that's cool.
So mainly in Chicago and Southern California. So we all get together. And the first time I did it, I never thought about it really, but everyone's selling each other on different trips that they've been on. So, because they all know that they've been on trips with me, but they might not know each other. And hey, how do you know, Ralph? What trip did you go on? Oh, I went to Cuba. Oh, I went to Iceland. Oh, you got Iceland's a fantastic trip. You got to go on the Iceland trip. That kind of thing. And so they're selling each other, and it was really nice, and it made me feel great because that people are just loving my trips and the
Yeah, you should
style
definitely
of trip
do
that I've
that. I
created.
mean, I've when I meet up with people like post a particular trip, it's always like a really cool experience, right? Like in a different country or something. So yeah,
Yeah, and they can't wait to host it. Hey, Ralph, I'll host it next year. And so it's
interesting.
yeah,
That's really
it
cool.
can
Damn,
get
I have one more
overwhelming,
thing.
but another thing that I learned
And
early
we'll
on
start
was
wrapping up
that the
soon,
more
Ralph.
information
You've been.
the more I could put that
Mhm.
on the website into
Um,
FAQs,
in my experience, when I've tried to
in
organize trips with friends,
that
it's just a
call that we
million
do,
messages
the
that I
Zoom
have to
call,
handle
come with
all
your
the time in
questions
terms of
on
people.
the
You
Facebook
probably get
page,
this
ask your questions
even
here
more
so that
because with
everyone
the
can
older
learn the
crowd,
answers.
they're maybe like slightly less
That's really important, but I
independent, or
don't
they're
get,
obviously
and
paying
that
you
I
a good
think
amount of money,
too
so
has
they're
to
probably
do with the
asking you a
type of
million
traveler
things
because
like how many
they know
hats
how to
should I
make a flight
bring and
arrangement. They know how
sunscreen.
to pack. I do provide packing
Does
lists,
this that does
suggested
this or
packing lists,
and
photography gear lists
mhm,
if they're interested in photography. But the more you could let people know what the trip's like, what to expect, how to prepare, the less questions they're going to have for you because the answers are all right there. Once in a while, you get an odd question or a random question that maybe I didn't even think of, and I'll answer it and I'll put it up on the Facebook group and say, "Hey guys, great question from Alice," blah blah blah. So that's how I handle it. Yeah,
yeah, fair enough. Just get ahead of it as much as possible. Cool. This has been really interesting. I really enjoyed this conversation today, Ralph. But yeah, why don't you take this time to share a final message with the audience? Anything you'd like to communicate?
sure. Um, my tagline is "Life's too short not to travel." And as I get older, the more I realize that there's fewer years ahead of me than there are behind me. And those years went by real quick. So don't wait until it's the perfect time or you got the perfect amount of money or what, because people get hit by buses every day, and you never know what's going to happen tomorrow. And that's kind of how I created this series called The Mindful and Intentional Traveler. I created a book called 60 Affirmations for Travel. And my most recent one is a gratitudes edition.
Hmm.
And it's meant to make you more present and to get more out of your trip, to be here now. Because especially me, and I think I mentioned earlier that I wrote the books because I needed them. Because as a travel photographer, I used to go through these places with my eye to the viewfinder. And I started to think, was I really there? Yeah, physically I was there. I have a plane ticket to prove it. I got the pictures, but was I mentally there? Was I there really? And for me, it's about making sure everyone else is having a great time and experience, but also I'm working on 5 or 6 trips in advance. So in my free time, I'm on my computer, my phone, whatever, working on future trips. So sometimes I have to think, where am I? Because I'm in Cuba, but I'm working on a trip in Finland, and someone's asking me a question about Mexico. So I got this crazy thing, but the whole idea was that is to be more present, and that's wherever you are.
Hmm.
But as a mindful and intentional traveler, we've got these 5 senses. We have to really taste the food, feel the sunshine, smell the smells of the place, and all these other senses and I think you just get that much more out of your travels and that much more for your money. So that's to mention the Mindful and Intentional Traveler series. Those books are written by Continental Drifter. So if you look online at Amazon, or I can give you affiliate links for them for you. And what else? My website is continentaldrifter.co if people want to reach me over there and see what I do. I've got a weekly blog that goes out with good travel tips and things. And I've got a YouTube channel slash the continent or slash Continental Drifter. So I'm all over the place as far as social media goes. But if anyone had any questions, you can email me at ralph at continentaldrifter.co.
Awesome. Yeah, it makes me think. I mean, I'm sure a lot of these people, they're very much in the rat race or the routine of American life. And they probably remember this 2 week trip with you more clearly than the past 2 years of their life of the routine, right? Because it's something that's different, it's memorable, and time kind of slows down when you're traveling, I've noticed.
Yeah, that's the idea. That's exactly the idea.
Awesome. Well, this has been another episode of the My Latin Life podcast. Again, my guest today, Ralph Velasco from the Continental Drifter. This episode of the My Latin Life podcast is brought to you in part by Bit Refill. Bit Refill is the best way to spend your crypto in Latin America. Purchase gift cards or mobile refills from more than 3,500 brands in 186 countries instantly, safely, and privately. Visit bitrefill.com for more information. This episode of the My Latin Life podcast is brought to you in part by Job Stacking. Introducing Rolf Haltze's Paycheck Multiplication Layering Method, a revolutionary approach that redefines the traditional career path. This is Rolf's new Done With You program, where he'll work with you to implement job stacking for yourself. With this method, Rolf contractually guarantees that you'll be able to double your income in 45 days. So, are you ready to step out of the shadows of job insecurity and step into a world of career abundance? Then just click the link in the description of this episode, book a call with Rolf, and start walking the path of unleashing your earning potential with job stacking.